All right, we are live here from the OZPros studios in Charlotte, North Kakalaki. It's a beautiful day outside in Charlotte. Finally, after it rains like crazy for the last 2 days, tried to float away my backyard. Dumped a whole bunch of water in my pool. I don't know if anybody else out there has pools, but man, when it rains, it drives me insane because I put all this money into chemicals to get it nice and clear and sparkly. And then it rains and it dumps a bunch of mess in my pool and then makes it green. I really don't like that. And then I got to go spend a bunch more money in order to clean it up. So anyhow, super stoked that it's actually, I say that a lot, super stoked. But I am super stoked. I'm super stoked that it is now finally sunny out and is a beautiful day here in North Carolina. So today we are going to be talking about the Corporate Transparency Act. And for those of you that are tuning in, or those that may, of you that may be watching this as a replay, the Corporate Transparency Act was enacted, and was actually enacted a couple of years ago. And effectively, it makes it so that every single entity out there has to either be an exempt entity, and I'll walk through what those exemptions are, or file with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, that's also known as FinCEN, file a report with FinCEN that lists every beneficial owner of that entity, and it tracks it to a person, to a warm body with an address and either a driver's license or a passport. And those people who you track it to, who you file and you attach the beneficial ownership form in interest, you file that information with FinCEN. If their information changes, they have to notify FinCEN within 30 days. That's, my friends, is where the rubber hits the road as it relates to this compliance. Because we do, so our bread and butter is that we set up qualified opportunity funds and qualified opportunity zone businesses. And we've set up literally over 1,000 of them. And we are the registered agent for the lion's share of those. And I cannot tell you how difficult it is to get in touch with people to make sure that none of their information is changed when we go to file their annual reports with the Secretary of State. Now, most secretaries of state don't have teeth like this, right? Where if you fail to file, you could be faced with fines of up to $500 a day, up to $10,000, or potentially be looking at 2 years in jail time as a felony. Whoa, 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 whoa. People are like, whoa, wait a second. What's going on with this law? Like, why did they put this in there? Because it seems like when you look at this from kind of across the room, or when you look at it, you zoom out 30,000 feet, big picture, that this is a ridiculous burden on small business owners. And my friends, I don't know. I mean, we're going to walk you through how you can actually do it fairly easily to where it's actually not that much of a challenge. But if you're filing it yourself and you've got a number of entities, yes, if you try to file it with FinCEN yourself, it is going to be a ridiculous burden. Thus, that's why we are doing this webinar right now. That's why OZPros has kind of waded into the FinCEN compliance business. A little bit of background on me. I am an attorney. I've practiced for almost 25 years now. Wow, time flies when you're having fun. And I've done all types of work. We predominantly focus on tax mitigation right now, and we do so through these things called opportunity zones. And I'm not going to go into a big diatribe about opportunity zones, other than I think that they're the greatest tax incentive ever created by the legislature. And so inside of that, we had to take this fairly complex topic that people were very concerned about whether they were going to be able to be in compliance as they went down their opportunity zone venture. And we had to figure it out, and we had to make it understandable for folks. And even more importantly, make it so that it was fairly easy to do for folks. And so that's what we did for the Opportunity Zone program. We utilized the software program that we had developed for mergers and acquisitions in order to make the Opportunity Zone program accessible to Main Street America. I like to say that we brought Wall Street level sophistication to Main Street America, and we streamlined it so that it's fairly easy for folks to number one, stay in compliance, but then number two, to do so in a way that is going to let them sleep at night. As Emily just chimed in, simplicity. That's exactly right. It's all about sophisticated simplification. And that's what we did at OZPros. So when we looked at the Corporate Transparency Act, because if you haven't heard about it, then I mean, like, I get it. Maybe it's because that's what I search on my feed. And this is the type of stuff that I, geek out on. So that's what my feed sends me. But man, I've been inundated with articles about Corporate Transparency Act and about how it's out there. And so if you haven't at least heard about it, then you need to crawl out from underneath that rock, break the newspaper that you're carrying around and jump into the current, time where this is very relevant. And so when we found out about that, we said, listen, is there any, how can we make sure that our clients are good, and what do we need to do with respect to this? And I'm going to get into this. I'm going to actually do a presentation. I'm going to kind of walk through the elements of FinCEN. But we tried to punt, which a lot of accounting firms and law firms out there are doing. They're like, yeah, listen, you got to take care of that yourself. And there's a lot of registered agent companies out there doing the same thing. They're like, yeah, we don't really have any resources on that because we don't want to be liable in the case that it gets screwed up. And the real issue with that is because of the 30-day update. And they're like, listen, it's hard enough to track clients down when they want something, let alone when they're doing their own thing. And you're like bugging them about, hey, have you filed your FinCEN report? And in theory, you should be reaching out to them every 30 days. Hey, did you change your address in the last 30 days? And as a result, most folks are kind of taking the, hey, go do that yourself or go find somebody else to do that. And we looked at that. And as we looked at it, we figured out that we could not do that because we are going to be the company applicant. And I'll explain to you why that's significant. And well, it's significant because every company applicant has to put information in with FinCEN as well. And a company applicant is basically whoever files the articles of organization for an entity or directs the filing of those articles is going to be determined to be the company applicant. And ultimately, it's got to come down to an individual. That's what all this is about. And we determined that there was no way that we were going to get around it. So we're like, you know what? We're going to embrace this and we're going to make it, we're going to take our OZPros mojo and we're going to apply it to FinCEN, and we're going to figure out a way to do this in a streamlined basis to utilize technology in order to bring simplified sophistication, to bring Wall Street level sophistication to Main Street America, and to make this as easy as possible for the people that are the backbone of our economy. So that's what we've done. What I do want to point out is that this legislation really does affect small business owners. So as that happens, everybody's like, well, man, why are they doing this? Is this just like a Big Brother type play? And the answer is no. They need the information in order to fight money laundering and in order to fight human trafficking and that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know where you stand on the spectrum relative to libertarianism versus, kind of progressivism or whatever, but I'm a huge libertarian and I would prefer that the government not have any involvement and that they stay out of our affairs as much as possible. But unfortunately, a couple of bad apples spoil the bunch and they ruin it for the rest of us. And the fact that terrorists and criminals and the mafia and other types of organized crime have figured out that the best way to launder money is to have a series of LLCs that ultimately kind of go back and around, and that running money through those is the best way or the easiest way to be able to obfuscate who actually owns them and who should actually be the person that's paying the taxes. And so the Corporate Transparency Act set about to remove that ability for folks to be able to do. And let's just go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to share my screen, and I think I'm going to do it this way. Yeah. All right. I think that got it. Well, man, it's interesting that that's not working. I think I got to actually like zoom in over here. Nothing like live TV for some fun about whether you're all right. There we go. I think that gets it lined up a little bit better. But we are OZPros, and we typically do opportunity zone stuff, but this is about FinCEN. And we talked about kind of what the law is, but the basic concept is that every entity that's out there, and it applies to, and this is going to be really significant. I'm going to come back to this, but I'm going to tell it right now. Any entity that was formed prior to January 1st, 2024 is ultimately going to have to file. Every entity formed after January 1st, 2024 has to file within 90 days during this year. And so if you're filing a company right now, you've got to file a report with FinCEN, and you've got to delineate who the beneficial owner is and who the company applicant is. The interesting part about that is that there could be indirect beneficial owners that you don't really think about based upon, up the chain ownership of companies. So if you've got stacked ownership, you ultimately have to trace it back to beneficial owners that are a person, right? Which is tough. And that's where this analysis comes in. That's where we come in, is we assist you with that to make sure that you're filing the correct information, calculating indirect ownership. Some real estate transaction structures are going to have issues with that. And then qualified opportunity zone funds, which is what we specialize in, they have unique set of circumstances because there's always that nested structure. Every reporting company that is not exempt must file a beneficial ownership information report that discloses 5 specific items of personal identifiable information, that's PII, for each of its beneficial owners. Like I said before, entities formed on or after January 1st, 2024 must also identify and provide the same 5 items of PII for the entity's company applicant. And then prior to January 1st, 2024, you are going to have to file a report by January 1st, 2025. It doesn't kick in and then you got 30 days to file. It kicks in where you have to file by January 1st, 2024. Now, there's no annual renewal. And so that's where a lot of people could be like, oh, well, wait a second. I don't have to annually renew this thing like I did with like the Secretary of State. The problem is, and that's the thing that's the issue, which is going to probably cause the biggest amount of problems, is that you don't think about whether you actually changed your address until it's time to file an annual report. You're like, oh, yeah, actually, there's some information that's changed. Well, here, it's up to you that if any of this information changes, you have to notify and you have to update FinCEN within 30 days. And that's where I think people are going to get jacked up. So failure to file on time when that information changes could be a $500 per day fine. Ooh. Up to $10,000. Oh, and hey, by the way, as well, is that a willful failure to file or filing false information could result in a felony and up to 2 years in prison. Oh, and hey, by the way, if it's coupled with any kind of money laundering activity or whatever, it could increase that time up to 10 years. Here's the problem, is that the definition of money laundering is extremely broad. And so if you were to get crosswise with the IRS or with the U.S. attorney or for whatever reason, whatever that is, and lo and behold, you've foot faulted on the Corporate Transparency Act, and oh, hey, they can maybe even throw in some financial crimes piece of that because for whatever reason you wired money right through something. Oh, wow. Now we could be looking at upwards of 10 years for this count in the Corporate Transparency Act alone, let alone the time associated with whatever else they're charging you with. So it becomes a big deal. And it becomes a big deal so that way you're not potentially going to get prosecuted for this stuff. Whoo, yes, I said it, prosecuted. And I usually don't fearmonger. I usually don't oh, you're going to go to jail, right? Like, oh, securities world, you're going to do jail time. This one has jail time associated with it. So this Corporate Transparency Act, let's talk about what's a reporting company. It defines a reporting company as a corporation, limited liability company, or other entity that is created by the filing of a document with the Secretary of State or any similar office under the law of a state or Indian tribe. It's formed under the law of a foreign country and registered to do business in any state or tribal jurisdiction by the filing. So basically, if you got an entity and you filed something with a state, you are a reporting company. Let me say that again. Any entity, you are a reporting company. So this is where it gets really interesting because, oh, hey, by the way, that single member disregarded entity that you don't have to file on your taxes because it's under your Social Security number. Oh, no. Hey, no, that's a reporting company. Oh, and hey, by the way, you're going to have to go get an EIN and you're going to have to make a FinCEN filing for that entity. So every time you set up one of those wholly owned LLCs to own all of the real estate that you own, like the 30 houses, and it's a disregarded entity for tax purposes. So thank goodness you don't have to file a tax return for each one. And sometimes, depending on what state you're in, you may not have to file an annual report for each one, but you're going to have to get an EIN and you're going to have to make a filing for that individual entity. So this is, hey, pay attention. This is a big deal. Yeah, so we got some comments, right? We were talking about if you're like things that trigger that need to update FinCEN within 30 days is if your driver's license expires or your passport expires or you change your address. Any of the information that changes for those 5 personal identifiable information elements, you have to notify them within 30 days. Not good. I mean, I can't think about, like I think about all of the things that have to happen when like when you are changing your address. I mean, think about the debacle of moving and now you got to add this to the list. Well, that's the reason why we set up what we did so we can make it as easy as possible because, hey, you got to set it up for you individually and you have to file that information for you individually. Oh, and then, hey, by the way, you also have to then file updated reports for each individual company. So think about that for you, those of you folks that have numerous members in a company. If any single one of those members changes their address, so you think about that, right? You think about like a fund that has 100 investors in it. Any one of those 100 investors changes their information, they've got to get that information to FinCEN, and then they've got to take that and they've got to file it with each other company as well. Uh-oh. Yikes. That's not going to be, the administrative burden's not going to be that intense. Yeah, whatever. That is not going to be fun. All right, so let's talk about what's not a reporting company. So if you do business as a sole proprietor, you do not have to file. And if you're a common law general partnership or some kind of trusts, right? So some trusts don't actually file with the state. Those don't have to file either. But if you file anything with the state, LLC, corporation, limited partnership, then you are a reporting company. You got 23 separate exemptions. And the main crux of this is that if you're a big company that's probably going to have some other type of like reporting requirement, then you don't have to file. So a securities reporting issuer, they've got all kinds of information on file about you. So they're not really worried that out. Anything that's regulated, they're not, you don't have to file because you've already effectively done it. Or the thinking is that if you're doing more than $5 million in revenue, that you're going to have a substantial operation where they could come and find and run down like who the actual beneficial ownership entities are. Accounting firms don't have to file. Now that's kind of a racket, right? It's like, accounting, what up? What's up with that? And the reason is because you have to file all the information for being an accounting firm. Or if you're a tax exempt entity, you don't have to file. It's interesting. They don't put law firms on here, right? Law firms are not exempt. So if you've got a law firm that's set up as a PLLC or a PC or anything else, you've got to file. You've got to get your information into FinCEN. All right. 2 types. We're going to talk about what's a company applicant. So we talked about this before. Is it related to OZPros? If we're setting up an entity or what, even if what we were like, all right, well, listen, maybe we're not going to set up entities anymore. We're just going to have our registered agent company do it. But because we were telling the client to engage the registered agent company and basically what needed to happen there, then an individual is a company applicant if the individual is primarily responsible for directing or controlling such filing if more than one individual is involved in the filing. And so we decided that we probably fell under it for that. And so we were like, yep, you know what? Let's bite the bullet. Let's rock and roll with this. But once again, the company applicant always has to be an individual, not a firm or company. So ultimately, that individual would be me. And so I was like, listen, let's make sure that we understand this thing because of the potential liability associated with being a company applicant. And once again, fines and potential jail time, neither of which I'm a fan of. A beneficial owner is an individual that meets either test. An individual is a beneficial owner if the individual exercises substantial control over the reporting company, or if you own more than 25%. A beneficial owner must always be an individual, except where an exempt entity owns an ownership interest in a reporting company. So if you're exempt, so like if there's a bank that's exempt, then it doesn't have to go back up to a person. But otherwise, it always has to track back to a warm body. And that's significant because that's how the folks were getting around being able to hide this stuff, is because they would track it back into, they'd have all of these like trusts, and then they would own like shell LLCs that had all these different LLCs. And so you track through one LLC, get to the other one, and then get to the other one. And then finally you get to like whoever the owner is. And it's like some kind of, Cook Islands trustee of a trust. And it's like, well, wait a second. What is that? And they wouldn't be able to get any information around it. So that's why they have delineated it to where it's got to be a warm body. This is the calculation rule, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of this. If you've got questions about this, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is I wanted to get this out so that if people, to just kind of make sure that people were understanding it. And then if you have questions, to get in touch with us, if you go to OZPros.com or you click on that QR code that's up in our screen, that's going to take you to our main webpage, and you'll be able to fill in a contact us information, request, submit that form, and we will absolutely get in touch with you, and we'll have a conversation about what your specific situation is and how we can help. All right. So once again, I'm not going to kind of get to the weeds of this. Oh, other than married individuals in community property states is, so if you're in a community property state and you have a beneficial owner by reason of ownership, so like one guy owns an interest, and this is the case for, for our opportunity funds, and that individual is married and resides in a community property state, you need to figure out, because more than likely the individual spouse or registered domestic partner must also be designated as a beneficial owner. Rutro-Rorge, do you live in a community property state? Are you comfortable with potentially leaving them off? So the answer is always just over-report. So just list your spouse, and if you're in a community property state. More than likely, it probably just goes ahead and makes sense to, if you own partnership interest, just go ahead and list your spouse one way or another, whether you're in a community property state or not. Then you got a beneficial owner based upon substantial control. There's a whole litany of things that delineate whether they are that. Once again, it's kind of crazy. Senior officer of the reporting company, or a person who has authority over appointment or removal of any senior officer. So if you're a manager and you have the ability to do these things, then you need to make sure that you are reporting as a beneficial owner. Then this kind of walks through the decision tree. All right, so data required for the reporting company. You got to have the legal name, any trade names or DBAs, current street address of principal place of business, jurisdiction of formation, and the EIN. And then for each beneficial owner, this is anybody that owns more than 25% or exerts substantial control, legal name, date of birth, residential address, unique identifying number, so security number, whatever, like taxpayer identification number, and an image of the document that supplies the unique identifying number. So that could also be your driver's license number or your passport number. And you're going to have something with a picture on it that delineates you as that person. For each company applicant, you got to have the same information as the beneficial owner. And except that as company applicants, we get to use our business address. Woohoo! I think that when I did it, I used my home address because it was like, hey, might as well. Because not only am I going to be the company applicant, but I'm also going to be an owner inside of this. And so I went ahead and got my own FinCEN reporting ID. So if you are interested in utilizing our solution, you can go to ozpros.fincenreport.com and click on sign up, and you enter your name and email address. And that's how or you can just drop us a line. So if you have more than 3 or more than 10 entities that you're going to need to get taken care of, then reach out to us. All right. So, so these are questions, and I'm not going to get into the details of all of these, but these are, I mean, as you can see, we've got lots of different specific, issues, right? That could all of a sudden, all of these could be, issues that could potentially pop up. And so you need to make sure that you've got somebody that can answer those questions for you so that way whether you're actually a reporting company or not. And so that's where we step in. Within our fee, you get our assistance, right, to know who you're going to list inside of the portal. And that's what OZPros is all about. We're trying to make this as simple and as convenient and as easy to do as possible. So one of the things that, so on the different presentations that I've been on, the different webinars about FinCEN and about the Corporate Transparency Act, is that there's this there's this case that was filed in Alabama. And in that case, this Alabama district judge issued an injunction enjoining the Treasury Department from enforcing FinCEN. And everybody's like, oh man, it got enjoined, so we don't have to comply with this anymore. The problem is that order only enjoined the Department of Treasury from proceeding against those individual plaintiffs in that case. And that's like 60,000 people. Everybody else still has to comply. And this was specifically Treasury's position that they stated on their website. So if you're counting on that, you need to be concerned, because FinCEN's going to be enforcing this, this year and then coming into next year. And that's the other piece. And that was another kind of significant thing that we talked about on the last webinar that we did for Ozworks Group. Ozworks Group is our online community of Opportunity Zone folks. And we said, there's 23 or 35 million, I think there's 35 million people that need to report, or maybe it's 23 million. I don't know. It's a lot. It's 20 plus million people that need to report. And I do know this statistic, that only like 1.5 million of those have actually reported. So of those 20 million plus entities, only literally like 1/20th of them have actually reported. And most of them probably are going to wait, right? And think about what's going to happen when 10, 20, 25 million people try to file their report in the fourth quarter. It's not a question of if the website's going to go down. It's a question of when. And I talk about this when we're setting up entities. It's not a question of when the IRS is going to shut down your ability to get an EIN. It's a question of when. And the same thing is going to happen with FinCEN. Oh, and hey, by the way, if you go to file the FinCEN report yourself and you have questions, you can't call FinCEN. There is no 1-800 number. IRS at least has an 800 number, and it's tough enough to get a hold of them. But literally, FinCEN has $0, 0 people allocated to helping people figure this out. They're literally just in there for enforcement. And so you're going to need somebody that that knows what they're doing and can help you to make sure that you get that done. So the takeaway from this, if you get one thing out of this, if you have an entity that's under $5 million, call us so that we can help you get that filed, and call us, reach out to us, get that done today. Take action literally right now in order to cross it off your list. The great news is that you only have to do it once, and then you just have to update it if anything changes. Our portal will automatically update that to the extent that you have a change. And there's unlimited filings associated with our fee. So once again, we're excited about being able to offer this to people, to take our OZPros magic and to take what is promising to be kind of it could be an interesting deal as we come in, but we're trying to get on the forefront of it. We're trying to help our clients to make sure that they're in compliance. That's what we do at OZPros. We try to make tax mitigation and generational wealth creation fun and meaningful. And we're all about doing well by doing good. So if you're interested in either that or making sure that you're in compliance as you're going about your business of doing well by doing good, reach out to us today. This is OZ Sherpa, and I'm going to wrap this up, and we're done. Actually, we got one question. If I'm a real estate investor and have each of my properties under a different LLC, do I have to do this for all of them? And the answer is unequivocally yes. Even if those are disregarded entities that you have to get an EIN and then file a FinCEN report for each one of those. Love the questions. Appreciate all you guys being here today. Appreciate you watching. And come check us out on YouTube if you're interested in further stuff. We've got it's youtube.com/OZPros. And we got all kinds of information about opportunity zones, about generational wealth creation, and about some of the cool projects that we've been a part of and had the fortunate opportunity to be able to enjoy. Cheers, y'all.